Bob Seabourne, who has been drawing and painting since he was about 4 years old when his mother discovered his talent. He received a Bachelor of Fine Art from Kutztown, and he's had a very varied career. He's always done some kind of art. He was a wildlife artist in his 20s, an animator in his 30s, and started doing oil painting again in his late 40s. He likes to create landscapes from photos in his studio, but he also loves to do plein air painting as well.
Drawing since I was about 4 years old. My mom had me draw a choo-choo train, and believe it or not, I drew it exactly like she did. And she would not tell this, but she's an artist as well. I've seen her draw, and she's very good at it. I started painting in oils when I was about 13 years old. She got me into a lot of different classes, private classes, public classes, that sort of thing. So I was able to really learn a lot about different materials, different mediums. I've done most every type of medium that there is, except for one that Fran does, and that would be alcohol. Alcohol ink. I haven't done that yet.
Most people haven't.
No, it's a little bit more interesting. So, let me see. What else? Let's see. I do have a Bachelor of Fine Art from Kutztown. Right after I graduated, I actually self-taught to be a graphic designer. Found that fine art doesn't really pay the bills, but graphic design does. So I was able to kind of teach myself to do that. That also introduced me into computers, which helped me out a lot as well. I'm sure most of you have kind of grown into computers the same way I did. I was also a student at, it's called the Barnstone Studios. It was in Allentown. I see some heads shaking. That's great. I'm glad to see that some of you know who that was and what that was. And that's actually very, very important to me, which I'll touch on that a little bit later on about that. I grew up in Douglasville, which is a very rural area. At least it was way back when. Yeah. Except I grew up on the Britain Lodge side of the river. So it was a lot of farmland. I had the very fortunate opportunity that my mom remarried, and the man that she married to, he had a very large acreage. So I was roaming around the fields, woods, going into the creek, and that's where a lot of my love of nature came from. As Fran said, I was doing wildlife art in my 20s, very detailed. I was doing gouache and cassines, which are both water-based paint. Then life kind of intervened, and I got married, I had children, I had to have a job, I had to support my family, so I had to do all those things. But I was still always trying to do something with art. Then around in my 30s, I actually got into 3D animation. I landed a job with a video production company, and they wanted me to be their animator, and we actually did some things for Hebe's, an advertisement for Hebe's, which we did in 3 dimensions. We also did, if anybody knows, I don't know if you know, and yes, I do a little sarcasm, maybe like the Reading Royals. We were there for the inaugural games. I was actually out on the ice when they first skated out on there, but I created their lion logo in 3 dimensions, and I actually got it to roar, and there were a couple other things that I did with that as well. Got involved with the Reading Phillies for a short period of time and created another character of theirs that was a virtual character. So now that's just the art side of it. I could throw in there, let's see, I'm a carpenter. I did sales for Home Depot, for Sears Hardware, which nobody has anymore. I even worked for Staples for a short period of time as well. So my career has been very, very diverse, if you will. A lot of things that you will see that I'm going to show you, I built them, things like this. I like to repurpose things. I'm sure a lot of you guys get smart with that and do the same thing. So, what else? Let's see. Oh, I was an instructor at Berks Technical Institute for 15 years as a graphic design instructor. That gave me a lot of opportunity to meet people. It gave me the opportunity to start painting again, so that's why I got into the oil painting. And Fran and I were just talking that 2016 was the last time I actually got into the Plein Air West Reading. Again, like I said, life intervened, so it was like that one time, and then everything else was just life. So this year, this is great that I was able to get in. And she did neglect to say that it's 4 people from Reading out of 50. So it's 50, right? I think it is.
I don't. Oh, you mean the people who entered?
Yeah.
50 or a little bit more, right in the 50s, yeah.
Yeah, something like that. So that's kind of good. So, let's see. Finally, to bring us up to where we are right now, I was a facilities manager of a golf course. Learned a lot of different things from that, including how to handle people. And then finally, I'm now a carpenter. That's a little bit closer to home. I say this only because it actually gives you more time to be able to paint. I do plein air painting. I love doing plein air painting, which is basically being outdoors and painting right on the spot. You have to paint very quickly. You have to make very quick decisions. Mixing your paint while you're doing it has to be done very much on the fly. If you've ever done it, you will notice that things change. Your lighting changes. The clouds change. Birds will fly at you. Animals will come up to you, and you got to be prepared for that. So, what else? So, what I want to do tonight is I'm going to show you and talk to you a little bit about my creative process. A lot of people ask me how I do my things, what materials I use, how I paint on them. I will tell you right off the bat, whether I am in the studio or I'm out in the field, I will do a painting roughly between an hour to 3 hours, and that's a completed paint. All right, so I paint on masonite. Masonite is a hard board, okay? It's very smooth. It can be very smooth on one side and have a texture on the back side, which you will never be able to paint on this, or it can be smooth on both sides, okay? I'm still trying to learn the difference between, I believe this is called tempered and untempered. They both feel the same. Okay.
Tempered has a sizing in it.
What's that?
The tempered has a sizing in it. The untempered is done with just steam and wood.
Wow. And you never knew that's what the difference was. I thought it was something with the pressing, not so much.
Well, that's what's
the
included
glue.
in the pressing.
Yeah.
And the untempered is just wood and steam. That's
Okay.
all. That's all it is.
So I cut them down to size, whatever size I want, whatever size I feel. You're going to see that I don't normally go with
Standard size.
standard sizes, correct. And these are actually cut-offs from pictures that I did from previous. And I will experiment with them and put different colors on to see how it works. I will tone mine. So what I do is I cut my boards down. I will put 3 coats of gesso on this. And what I do is I don't use a brush, I use a roller. It's a foam roller. It gives a very nice smooth finish to it, and I even sand it down a little bit at the very, very end. Okay. I then take a mixture of burnt sienna and burnt umber and turpenoid, and I will water it down basically and put it on as a stain, and then I will wipe it off so that I get a nice even tone to it. Okay. I like a warm
So you want to
tone.
start?
Yeah, this is how I will start. Okay. I like a warm tone, but you could do like a cool gray. You could do a warm gray. I've seen people do like a light blue. It all depends on what kind of feel you want to have in the very, very end. So that's one thing. What happens after that is I will choose photographs. I like to use photographs Tonight I'm actually going to be using this one, okay? And this was just a field that I had found that had some marshes growing in the very front of it, and there was a beautiful barn in the background. As you can tell, I like to do a lot of old barns and old buildings. It's just something I like to do. Okay, I'm drawn to history. That's one of the things that I like the most. Now, when I start out and I find my picture, okay, I will try to get this down to the proportion that I want to do. So this is roughly 5 by 7.5, which then breaks down to this size, which is 8 by 10. Okay, it was just how I had printed this one. The reason that you will see these lines on it, it goes back to what I said about the Barnstone Studio. The Barnstone Studio, the gentleman, oh my God, I lost his last name. Byron. What is it?
Myron Barnstone.
That's now you know why I forgot it. It was a senior moment. So, I studied under him for about a year, and that was about it. And I liked what he said, and I didn't like what he said. I didn't agree with everything that he said. But a friend of mine just recently told me about what's known as dynamic symmetry, and she told me about this gentleman who wrote a book on dynamic symmetry. And I got the book. It was $100, but I got that book. It was well worth it. What I found out was this guy had studied under Myron and learned dynamic symmetry from him, and I realized, oh my God, I learned the same thing, and I just never realized it. Does anybody know what dynamic symmetry is?
Yeah. Well, I study with Myron.
Okay, then you know. Definitely.
The golden section, golden symmetry, they call it the
triangle,
golden mean, golden
yeah.
mean.
Yeah.
So
Fibonacci's numbers.
Well, that's true with any.
right.
What's that?
That's true with any art.
It is. It is. But here's the thing: is that
This is the way of gridding with like 3 lines coming
that's
out from
gonna
them.
be
with the diagonals.
Yeah.
With the diagonals.
Yeah,
Yes.
I've heard of that.
We know it if we look at our telephones and we look at our cameras as the rule of thirds. Well, that was the shortcut because, what was it, the 50s, the 60s, maybe even earlier than that, we had modern art. And modern art threw away all the rules. Okay? These were the rules. And if you look at any of the old masters and you lay a grid, and diagonals, I should say, they will all line up, okay? And it is absolutely amazing, isn't it? It is.
Fibonacci, really.
Yes, yes. The simplest of doing this is this. You will draw from opposing corners diagonal lines. From those diagonal lines, okay, you will take a triangle and you will draw from one corner to this diagonal line, which is the opposing one. And what happens is that becomes the perpendicular part of it. The intersection there is one of the points of interest, okay? And you're doing 4 of them. But it's not just the points of interest. You want those lines, those diagonal lines, for things to start falling on. Well, this particular line that goes all the way down to this corner here lines up with the top of that roof, okay? Now, in a photograph, everybody knows in nature, we can't get everything to fall on the lines that we want them to. So we have to adjust, okay? When I drew this out, sorry, I like things to be level. When I drew this out, yes, I drew my line so that my rooftop went with the diagonal, okay? Sorry. I also took these 2 trees and said, they don't look good in the center like that. So I actually pushed them and put them onto this side here, okay? And had the diagonal go close to the top. The diagonal doesn't have to go through or doesn't have to follow the edge of every single object. It can meander, or the object can meander over that line, but it doesn't have to go exactly on that line, okay? And that was one of the things that I started to learn. And I did this relatively quickly. It like all came back from the time that I went, which was 30, 40 years ago. So it all just started coming back, and it just made so much sense. And even my friend said when she starts to see my pictures, she said she noticed the difference right away. Composition was so much better. In imagery, so you start to see a line that goes down this way, because even going across, you can see that it goes through. And even just shadows will also create those diagonals. Okay? So things like that. It might be a little bit harder to see in something like this one because you have a lot of squares, rectangles, vertical and horizontal lines. But believe it or not, it does pass through some of these things, even this branch right in here, going through here, right to that corner. Okay? And vice versa going this way. Okay? I use Demar varnish. No, I'm sorry. I used to use Demar varnish. Now I use Gamvar. I like Gamblin paints and their products, so I use a lot of their stuff. So,
is that satin or gloss?
I use the gloss. I just like it a little bit better. I know it can get tricky when you want to photograph it, but it just seems like it brings out the tones a lot more. It makes those darks very rich. It even brings your vivid colors up a little bit more.
Get more dimension, probably.
Mm-hmm.
So these are oil paintings, right?
Yes.
Do you use the mineral base or water base?
I use the mineral base. Okay. I tried the water. I don't like it. You call me a traditionalist, but I just like the feel of the mineral based oils. I have friends who will always say, "Oh, wear gloves," and sometimes I get into it too much that I forget to put gloves on. So. But I'm a very clean painter. I mean, I'm dressed like this. I can throw paint on this, and I will not get paint on myself. So I might get a little bit on my hands, but not much. Okay. Like I said, I use Gamblin. Anyway, this is my Pashad box. This is my plein air box. Okay. This is how it's loaded every time I go out. Even have canvases or panels in the back here, okay? And I can just put them on here when I'm ready to paint.
Do you duplicate the paints that you have in your studio, or do you use the same box and pull out supplies in your studio as
I
well
duplicate. So I have a set of the same colors that I use in my studio as well. So, and to be honest with you, I use, well, if you work in oils, get one of these boxes. These are great because I went and pre-mixed my colors for this painting, but these are all the colors that I use. So I will use cadmium red medium, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow medium, titanium white, cerulean blue, cobalt blue. I found this. This is called Bush Green. Gamblin made it. I've also mixed my own green as well, using cad yellow medium, and I believe it would be, and I'm going to lose my cobalt blue there. Okay, I'm not even going to butcher the name, but this is purple. You kind of know what the color is. And then I use Mars Black. No, sorry, Ivory Black. Okay. For years, I did not use black. I actually mixed my own blacks. And part of the reason was kind of a myth that somebody said to me, "Oh, never use black in a painting." I was like, "Okay, I won't. I'll mix my own blacks." Then I heard, "Never use black straight out of the tube on your painting." I went, "Oh, okay, now I get it." So, and even though this looks black, this is actually a brown. I mixed red and a little bit of cad orange with the black and got my brown. So what I did with this painting, or this picture, I should say, is I will look at a painting and I will determine what are my primary colors that I want to use. Like I said, I use Gamlin. Anyway, this is my Pashad box. This is my plein air box. Okay, this is how it's loaded every time I go out. Even have canvases or panels in the back here. Okay, and I can just put them on here when I'm ready to paint.
Do you duplicate the paints that you have in your studio, or do you use the same box and pull out supplies in your studio as
I
well as?
duplicate. So I have a set of the same colors that I use in my studio as well. So, and to be honest with you, I use, well, if you work in oils, you get one of these boxes. These are great because I went and pre-mixed my colors for this painting, but these are all the colors that I use. So I will use cadmium red medium, cadmium orange, cadmium yellow medium, titanium white, cerulean blue, cobalt blue. I found this. This is called Bush Green. Gamlin made it. I've also mixed my own green as well, using cad yellow medium, and I believe it would be, and I'm going to lose my cobalt blue there. Okay, I'm not even going to butcher the name, but this is purple. You kind of know what the color is. And then I use Mars Black. No, sorry, Ivory Black. Okay. For years, I did not use black. I actually mixed my own blacks. And part of the reason was kind of a myth that somebody said to me, "Oh, never use black in a painting." I was like, "Okay, I won't. I'll mix my own blacks." Then I heard, "Never use black straight out of the tube on your painting." And I went, "Oh, okay, now I get it." So, and even though this looks black, this is actually a brown. I mixed red and a little bit of cad orange with the black and got my brown. So what I did with this painting, or this picture I should say, is I will look at a painting and I will determine what are my primary colors that I want to use. Those were the colors that I mixed. Sky blue, my ochres, my red for the, oh yeah, I forgot about that.
The barn.
The barn! The roof of the barn, no less. My green, my brown, and my grays. Okay? And the thing is that I don't have to mix a whole lot of grays. I just need to mix one. And then I can just add or subtract, or add white, or add black. And I make it a little bit, different color, or different tone, I should say. Same with my browns, same with my greens. Okay? So that's how I get started. Now, here's a question for you. You're ready to paint. Does anybody hesitate? Come on. Nobody hesitates, like they don't pick up the brush and go.
Well, what would you start with?
Good question.
That's why.
That's a good question.
That's why you would hesitate.
I used to hesitate. And I'd find every reason not to paint things. Oh, I got to clean the studio. Oh, I got something else to do. Oh, my wife's calling me. What I did was I found that if I picked up my brush and I just stuck it in the paint, that automatically made me paint. And to answer your question, I start with my darks. I will always start with my darks. So I will start putting in all of my shadows, anywhere that I might have like the browns for the bushes and the dark trees and that sort of thing. Any shadows that might be strong in the foreground, that's how I will start. And once I get going, that's it. I can just keep going until I'm done. Now something bigger, something like this one. This one took me 3 days. But I painted maybe 2 to 3 hours a day on this. And I like to paint alla prima. I don't like my stuff to dry. So this was kind of difficult for me because when the greens started to dry, I had to kind of revive them a little bit. Anybody recognize this? No? Okay. This was a church on 724 in Douglasville. Anybody know where Tipsy Time is? It's a bar that's right past Red Corner Road, Blackwood Golf Course. Okay.
I know where that is.
If you go past, keep going toward Birdsboro. This actually was on the left-hand side of the road. They tore this church, which was the oldest church in Berks County, down 2 years ago. And I went by this church probably every day, twice a day for 4 years, and would take pictures every time I went by. And I just happened to get this one now. Here's the thing. There's the photo, okay? And what I did was I started doing a drawing to make it a little bit longer, okay? And even though, and I don't know if you can see it, but this was a stone wall that went in the front because it did have a stone wall in the front and it just started falling apart, okay? And that was part of the reason they tore the whole thing down. Now the graveyard is still there. They have a memorial up for it and everything, but it's just a shame. And I even knew a couple of people who were in the congregation for this church. The interesting thing is on the back side, where the pulpit would be, I guess, it's a half circle, or was a half circle for the whole entire side of that church. With plein air painting, you usually want to start with a fairly large brush. Now, this is an 8x10. I would probably even work a little bit larger. This is a number 4. I could probably go for a number 6, and it'd be a little bit bigger than this. It'd probably be out to about right here. Most of the brushes that I like to work with are the angled brushes. Okay, I don't know about you guys, but when they show those pictures of the canisters and they have all the paintbrushes in them, and you think, oh yeah, who has that many paintbrushes? And I'm sure the rest of you do too.
Yep. Collecting them for over 50 years.
Yes, absolutely. You can't throw a good brush away, Even if it has 2 hairs, you cannot throw it away. So anyway, I would start with larger brushes, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting in some of my darks. Normally, I would place this, hopefully it'll stay, I forgot my tape. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've got some small detail in here that's got some blacks. That's going to be where my barn is for the opening. I've got my trees that are going to be very dark. Even some of these trees back in here are going to be dark as well. So I'm going to put in all my dark areas. You can see a shadow right in this area here. And this one actually bleeds out into the snow, so I got to be very, very careful with that. I do not use medium, okay? People always ask me why. I always feel it thins down my paint and then it takes forever for me to build my paints back up. And I don't want to do that. I just want to throw the paint on there. I'll push it around. It'll do what it needs to do because I know what it's going to do. So, what I'll do is, here's the hesitation. Okay, I'm done. I'll get my paintbrush full of as dark can be, and I'm just going to go in here and I'm just going to start putting in my darks. And I grew up with a father who was an engineer. Okay? Did I hear a chuckle? So I got to ask, why did you chuckle?
Very organized.
Very organized. Very analytical. Okay? So very analytical as well. And what happened was, I started to get that analytical part of it as well. And what I found was, it was actually a benefit. Because I could build this barn by myself, or at least help somebody build this barn. but I know how all the angles go together. I know what pieces go on top of this piece and that piece. And then when I get to the trees, I understand that there are branches that are coming toward me, and those are going to be the lighter ones, and the darker ones are going to go to the back. Okay? And so that analytical part of it really started to help me out with my paintings and get them to be a little bit more realistic, understanding them. But at the same time, it is a curse because it does kind of hinder you to a point. Now, I'm going to put a little bit of black in here. And yes, I will go over some areas, like my barn right there. I just went over top of the roof line. That's okay. I'll take care of that later. And this is weird because I'm looking at it from the side instead of from the front, so I got to kind of acclimate myself a little bit. So here's that dark shadow that I saw in here, and that'll bleed into the snow. I'll just let that go. Here, this part of it, this is the front part of these bushes. And I guarantee you I will not get this finished tonight. Well, at least not here. And I'm going to use, like right here is one of my diagonal lines. I'm going to use that right in that area there. Just so that I know it's going to be pulling your eye into it and up through it that way. For the most part at this point, I was going to say there's not much more I need to do as far as my blacks, but I see a black that I want to make sure I get. As we were saying, when you have your brushes long enough, you know how to shape them and how to use them to your full advantage. So right now, even though I'm using a 4, I'm going to put in some detail that is going to be my shadows underneath these eaves. Okay. Yes, I did that with the number 4 brush. Okay. All right. All right. So now I'm going to start working on those trees and putting a little bit in there. This is called blocking. Excuse me. If you haven't done this before, I'm trying to put in as much area of color as I possibly can. It doesn't matter as far as the shape is concerned or the detail is concerned. I just want to get the color on here, the paint on here, so that I know where things are. And when you're working outdoors, this is very, very important because everything's changing on you so rapidly. I have to admire the guys who do seascapes because they are working with just, oh my God. The sea is changing so much, so quickly. I mean, seconds go by and yeah, tons of water have gone by too. Now I'll go back into this again with my highlights. I like to work dark to light when I'm working in oils. And a lot of times I like to try to work from background to foreground.
So you keep your brush clean just by wiping it on and touch another color with it.
Relatively.
I mean, your colors don't get dirty.
If I were to go for my ochre, no, I wouldn't use this.
You'd use another brush.
I'd use another brush.
Okay.
Yeah. But I am always wiping it to get off as much paint as I possibly can. It also helps to shape the brush a little bit more, so it keeps it the way I want it to. Now, I've already put my darks in here, but I want to still put these browns in here, so I'm going to lighten these up a little bit. I can't say that I know everything about color and value, but I try. This is my palette of experimentation. So to look at this and think, okay, what color can I add to my browns here to make it look like it's a little bit lighter? I'm not going to add white, just pure white, because I don't think that would work. So I'm actually going to use a little bit of my ochre that I created. And I don't like it. It's not red enough, so I'm going to use a little bit of my orange color. That might work. So now, Fran, I went to a little bit lighter, creating a little bit lighter color.
With the same brush.
With the same brush. And I'm putting this in here now. Anybody know, does anybody know Helen Reinhold? So Helen has this exercise that she says you can create a painting, but you can only use 40 brush strokes. She says the students did what you just did, and then she tells them, load your paintbrush up with a whole lot of paint. I've yet to learn to do that. So, because you'll see me go in and I'm doing this, you know. Well, how many is that? Probably 10. So I'm done. So I'm just blocking in the color at this point. And I like that color better. And all I'm doing is using a little bit of that red from my barn's roof, which I pre-mixed. I wish I could tilt this for you. I can't. And the other thing that I've learned to do is, I don't know about you guys, but I have a library of books that my wife would love for me to get rid of, because there's just, in her words, too many books. And I don't think you could ever have too many books, because I've probably read almost all of them over the 50 years that I've had them, because I keep going back to them. But one of the things, one of the guys I like the most is John Carlson, who lived somewhere around 1900, and he wrote one book, and it was the most fascinating book on landscape art, because he broke everything down and how to paint it, and thinking about perspective and thinking about atmospheric perspective and how colors react next to each other. Just an incredible book, you know. So if you get the chance to, I believe it's called John Carlson's Book of Landscape Painting. So a lot of times what I'll do is, thinking about that, even though I have these trees back here that I'm creating, I actually want to do this part of it. There's going to be a row of trees, but they're going to be a little bit further back. What I'm going to do is I'll put in my brown, okay? I can even do it now.
The straight brown.
Just a straight brown, but to distinguish it from the foreground to the back, further away from us, they start to cool. And this is one of those things that we see it. The layperson, they see it, but they don't understand it. We do. And we do it by mixing a light, cool color into those things. And it starts to make that, push that back. Now, if I want to make this come forward a little bit more, yeah, then I'm just going to add a little bit more red and it'll pop it forward. So, but I got to be careful because I've got a foreground here and I got a foreground here. So, let me easy. How am I doing on time?
I don't know. 5? I don't know what time we started.
8 o'clock.
Do you know how we're doing on time, Jean?
Okay, so, do I have an hour?
in theory, this goes till 9. It depends on if you want people to interrupt you and ask questions like I've been doing, or if you want to have a separate question and answer.
I'm good with you guys talking to me at the same time because I can paint and talk at the same time as well.
They'd like us out of here by 9 o'clock.
By 9 o'clock. Okay, that's easy enough for us to do because we got an hour. I can do it. So anyway, I'm gonna scrubble this in real quick.
Don't you video just 60 minutes?
I'm gonna do the Helen Reinhold's speed painting. Put this in here. And I've added a little bit of red to this so that it's going to pop forward even more than this here. Okay? And then when I start to add a lighter color to it, which I'm going to want to do, that'll bring it forward even more. Now, I said that this was more of a brighter ochre, and this was kind of dulled down a little bit. There's a lot of shadows in here, and what I'm going to do is I will still take my browns, I might put a little bit of ochre into it, just a little. And in that area here, I'm just going to pick certain places so I can create shadows here, and then when I start putting my lighter colors on top of it, I've already got my shadows. And I will, when I get into it later on, talking about brushes, I said that I'm usually clean. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take my finger and do this across a brush so that it spreads the bristles out, and then I can start making these reeds with that. Or I will just take it and I'll point them and do it that way and almost make them single. And again, you can kind of see that I'm using these diagonal lines here in where I'm putting some of these shadows. Okay, even like in this area here, I might have that. So, sorry, I'm not really used to this. I'm not used to an audience. Normally, I will be having music blaring. I'll have a nice glass of wine. My wife will leave me alone, and I'll just keep painting as much as I possibly can.
When you're plein air painting, is that the easel you use? I mean, where would you put your paint? Or would you carry a little table?
I'll be honest with you. I will use. I'll use my box. So this device has a piece in it that connects to.
You can hang that whole box on there.
Yeah. So then I'll open this up, and I'll put my panel right here.
Okay.
Now I can't put a large panel. I could probably put that on here. I'd have to open this up so that it can come up a little higher. But then I also have one of these. This is just a paper palette. Yeah, and then I can just hold that.
They have attachments, I think, like tables.
Yeah, and sometimes I'll just when this is open, since I have all my paint on here, I'll just throw it on there and I'll work from that. So I'm literally working over my palette and going here to here, here to here, here to here, and it works very quickly. So when I'm at home, it's usually a side of me because I'm right-handed. I have it here, and I'm just putting it that way. So. But yeah, that's normally what I'll do. So, I'm trying to get one that I can actually put it here and span there.
I think they sell attachments.
I make my own stuff.
Well, but they do.
I'm still in the
You
process.
can look at it.
Yeah, I do. I actually
I do
took a
that
picture
too.
of it and I started building it. So,
But they
and
do
then I
that.
try to improve on it.
Yeah, you can always do that.
Absolutely. Anyway, I'm gonna scrubble this in real quick.
Don't you video just 60 minutes?
I'm going to do the Helen Reinhold's speed painting. Put this in here. And I've added a little bit of red to this so that it's going to pop forward even more than this here. Okay? And then when I start to add a lighter color to it, which I'm going to want to do, that'll bring it forward even more. Now, I said that this was a more of a brighter ochre, and this is kind of dulled down a little bit. There's a lot of shadows in here, and what I'm going to do is I will still take my browns, might put a little bit of ochre into it, just a little. And in that area here, I'm just going to pick certain places so I can create shadows here, and then when I start putting my lighter colors on top of it, I've already got my shadows. And I will, when I get into it later on, talking about brushes, I said that I'm usually clean. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll take my finger and do this across a brush so that it spreads those bristles out, and then I can start making these reeds with that. Or I will just take it and I'll point them and do it that way and almost make it single. And again, you can kind of see that I'm using these diagonal lines here in where I'm putting some of these shadows. Okay, even like in this area here, I might have that. So, sorry, I'm not really used to this. I'm not used to an audience. Normally, I will be having music blaring. I'll have a nice glass of wine. My wife will leave me alone, and I'll just keep painting as much as I possibly can. Just drag this out here a little bit. Some tufts of grass going on in there. Even in here. Down a little bit over. I know everybody is tired of snow and the cold, but the interesting thing is this, and I don't know if this is just me or other people have noticed it, I gravitate to the blue-orange part of the spectrum rather than the green-red part of the spectrum, which most people do. And that's why I always like blue sky, these ochres, even the reds and the browns and the oranges in there. I'm attracted to that more so than I am summertime. I mean, I'll do it, but I also throw my oranges in there, my ochres. So it's just something about it. I love fall. I'm sure everybody here loves fall too. So I'm just very attracted to that. So anyway, all right. So my barn I will actually leave to the end, but in this case, I'm looking at this. I am going to leave it because that's going to be, that for me is going to have to be a little bit more detail oriented. So I want to put a little bit into this, and then I'm going to put it into the sky. And if you notice, between these branches, you can see a little bit of the sky. It always used to throw me that I'd see people painting those little spaces between the branches. And I was like, how do you do that? And the more I did it, the more I got it. It actually does work. That when you're working from dark to light, putting a light color on a dark pigment, even though it's wet, it'll stay and it will show up. And it is amazing how much I can just take this brush literally dip it in the blue color, which I'll do in a minute or two, and then start to create those spaces in between. It's just incredible, and that's centuries of knowledge that we've been able to gain from, previous masters that have been, where we haven't yet. So, all right, so I'm going to put a little bit, because I want to show you how I start to blend in some of these trees in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this one aside to play it. And like I said, I pre-mixed all these colors, so I'm going to start putting in, and I try to get as close as I possibly can as I'm putting these colors in the very beginning. And then later on I start to bring those colors closer.
Do you do it with a smaller brush?
It depends. A lot of times I don't switch brushes that often, so I'll stay with this as long as I possibly can. If I wanted to be very, very, if I wanted to blend really nicely, like very subtly, then yeah, I'll go to a smaller brush. And this is a different type of bristle. I forget what this is. Doesn't even say. But it's a little bit softer of a bristle brush, and it just seems to blend it that much nicer. So I've heard people, and they've told me that they use a fan brush and do some blending that way. I could never get the hang of it. It didn't sit well with me. And a lot of times with the blue or the sky, this is where I pretty much load up my brush.
Do you try and keep your painting and strokes flat? Like oil.
Non-visible?
Yeah, because a lot of oils are really dimensional or thick.
Yes, I actually do.
You like the smoother.
Yeah, there's very few times that I like to see a brush stroke. I'd like to see it on somebody else's painting, but on mine, most of the time, I try to keep it smooth. Now, the interesting thing is when I do a sky, a lot of times people will say, oh yeah, just brush across and smooths everything out. But when you're doing something like this, you can't do that. So a lot of times what happens is I actually will find that I'm doing this kind of thing.
Cross-hatch.
Yeah. And until I start to put in like a lighter color, because I do want to put a lighter color that's closer to the horizon. Instructor in college used to say, you should be able to draw anything and everything with your paper held the way you started.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was just going to ask you to.
I said, yeah, right, you do that. I'm going to move mine and change it. So I can get a little bit closer in here, start to work the detail, get a crisp line along my rooftop. Instructor in college used to say, you should be able to draw anything and everything with your paper held the way you started.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you to.
I said, yeah, right, you do that. I'm going to move mine and change it. So I can get a little bit closer in here, start to work the detail, get a crisp line along my rooftop.
Do you do any acrylic work?
No. Who said that? Oh. No. I've tried acrylics. I don't like that they dry so quickly. And have you ever done gouache or KCs?
No, just acrylic.
Instructor in college used to say, you should be able to draw anything and everything with your paper held the way you started.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you to.
I said, yeah, right, you do that. I'm going to move mine and change it. So I can get a little bit closer in here, start to work the detail, get a crisp line along my rooftop. All right, so I'm going to try this. So I've kind of loaded this, but I've also deformed my brush a little bit. And I'm going to come in here and start. Start putting in the spaces in between. And you might not be able to see them from where you're at until you get a little bit closer, especially with this particular tree, because this tree doesn't, it's pretty dense. So I'm going to maintain that denseness. And even though I'm getting a little bit of the green on here, I'll wipe it off and I'll just go back into my blue. So I actually should have put these trees just a little bit closer to one another. Because I could have gotten some really neat effects with them. But you can see I've started to add the little spaces in between those. Now when I do things like this, okay, I'm going to actually take this blue down as close as I can to those trees. Because now I want to blend it. I want to pull it up into this. The problem is I have to be very careful, because every time that I go back into the brown, I might pull some of the blue into it. And that's not a bad thing, but for right now, I don't want to pull that in. So I'm just softening that up, and now I can actually put some of those light spaces in between. Just get lost in what you're doing, and you almost have to have that balance between getting lost in the painting but yet still pulling back to have control of it, because you don't want to overdo it. When I paint very quickly, I'm in the studio or I'm out in the field someplace, I'm just trying to create the impression. I would think about, here's my diagonals, where do I want to put them? You know? Now, granted, I'm not going to take clouds and go like this, but it would definitely fall within that area of those diagonals. So even with this one, you know, the image, the clouds really only went that far. That's all I saw. And then I said, okay, well, wait. If I extend these outward, now I'm going to be able to use that diagonal to this corner. And hence the reason that I brought them out like that. So, and even in here, you have these two little ones. They're still within that diagonal that's going around there. So I'm going to stop at this point, you know.